Queensland National Senator Matt Canavan says the Andrews government is desperately trying to shift the blame for the state's aged care crisis.
Well, I suppose you can understand them from purely a self-interested perspective. Dan is desperately trying to distract from his own deficiencies. That's pretty clear. He's made an absolute ham-fisted response to the coronavirus over the last couple of months, and he and his team have been responsible for a multitude of errors. It hasn't just been one mistake. There's been secrecy around an outbreak at a meatworks a few months ago. There was, of course, the high-profile disaster of security at hotels, and then it was sort of his attempt to blame the people of Victoria for the outbreak when clearly, and I've forgotten the protests, the Black Lives Matter protests as well. He let them go on as well without fining anybody, and we had a couple of cases out of those. So it's been a cavalcade of disaster here from this government, and now he's trying to desperately throw the spotlight into someone else.
You know what, Senator Canavan, I'm also concerned at the way in which politicians in this country have really, and I'm going to use the word discriminate because it is discriminate. We've had situations in the bush and in the regions. In Colac, it takes you 10 days to get the result of a coronavirus test. In Melbourne, it takes you 18 hours. I can't understand. We've got the problems and the frustrations at the Albury-Wodonga border. You know, we've got situations in Queensland where pubs and clubs in western parts of the state are being fined $6,500 and they haven't seen a coronavirus case ever. I mean, I just think as a National Party senator, where do you... I mean, it does seem incongruous that we've got this situation where there's almost a divide in this country.
Oh, look, Peter, I've been calling for some time that we need to localise our response. The state borders are arbitrary ones that were drawn 120 years ago in our nation. They are not drawn to protect us properly against a public health pandemic. They were drawn as a political carve-up at Federation. And look, I do see the need for reasonable travel restrictions at times when you're in a pandemic. But the more we can localise these, the more we can ensure that other parts of our economy and society that are not impacted can get on as normal. And if they can get on as normal, they can continue to be providing the wealth we need to now service and ultimately maintain this massive public debt we've had to accrue through this pandemic. So it's really, really important. This is not just a bit of an inconvenience for the people of Colac, as you mentioned. In my town of I've had to have the test 3 times because when you get symptoms, you get tested. I've come back negative every time. But you got to wait. Last time I had to wait almost 3 days, and you're out of action. You can't go out of your house, obviously, when you're waiting for the results. And that means every person who has to get tested in a place like Rocky is out of action for sometimes up to 72 hours, not necessarily working and producing and creating wealth. And so I have been pushing in Central Queensland for a testing facility to be there, so we don't have, because what happens is test results have to go to Brisbane and back. That's the delay at the moment. We don't have a testing facility in Rocky. Now, I realise we can't have a testing facility in every town, but surely some of these bigger regional centres can have some so we can quicken the pace of these things.
Matt, Premier Palaszczuk today essentially stopping anyone from Greater Western Sydney coming to Queensland. This whole problem with border restrictions escalating as the Victorian crisis worsens.
Look, it's very troubling. It's very troubling given that we had some hope on the horizon there a few weeks ago when the Queensland border opened. I was out in Winton a couple of weeks ago and the town was booming. There was tables out in the street, people out at dinner, caravans all over the place after the border had opened. But obviously with these further restrictions, that flow, that pipeline of tourists to Western Queensland and other parts of our great state is going to dry up. And that's really, really concerning. Look, I do, though, understand the need for these travel restrictions, as we've just said. What I would hope is that we continue to do it on a local basis. There's no community transmission in Tweed Heads, so let's not hope we have another farcical situation there where people on one side of the border can't go to school on the other or go to their place of business or work. We need to help those border communities as much as possible, while we also obviously trying to keep the pandemic from spreading right through the country.
Just a couple of non-COVID issues. Now, this government subsidisation of Australia's fossil fuel industries. Take us through that. How would that work?
Well, you're referring to the fact check article today from the so-called independent fact check unit. I haven't looked at it in detail, to be honest, but I did notice that Peter, they mentioned that I'd drawn a long bow. Apparently, I don't know really what that means. Am I right or am I wrong? But I drew a long bow. What's happened in the past is some green activist groups have tried to dress up things like the fuel excise rebate as a subsidy to our mining sector. It's not a subsidy. The fuel excise rebate is a clear recognition of the fact that our mining sector and our agricultural sector also get the rebate. Those rural industries don't use our public roads. Their trucks and tractors and other things that they use diesel for drive on their own roads that they create, that they get D9s out to push some trees down and make a road. So that's why they don't have to pay the fuel excise that others pay to upkeep the public roads that we use. It's not a subsidy. It's a true reflection of the use of a particular piece of infrastructure. Now, there's a whole other litany of things. I cannot recall, I'll have to check, but I don't think the ABC unit got in touch with me at all about this. I certainly haven't seen any correspondence. But look, good luck to them. We know where they come from here, Peter. We know that they're not independent. We know that the ABC increasingly just does the bidding of environmental groups. They're effectively the propaganda unit of Greenpeace.
Never a truer word said, I've got to say, Senator Canavan. Oh, look, before we go, this secret defence plan with the United States to counter China, your thoughts?
Look, it's very positive. Up here, I'm here in Darwin at the moment. The Northern Territory is a great place with huge potential for our country. And for long, though, there's been long discussions about the need for a greater security on fuel supply here. We have a significant defence assets, as you would know, and the US military itself has a rotation of troops through here. So when I was Minister for Northern Australia, we were discussing ways and means of financing a fuel supply base here, not necessarily just for the Americans, but for our own troops. But look, if we can get some American support and buy-in, that would be fantastic. We also have a national problem of not having sufficient supply and reserves of fuel, but obviously they're particularly important for our defence forces.